Hello, everybody. This is Jessica. Thanks for joining me in my studio today. And it's going to be this is a very crazy video because it recently has occurred to me how much watercolor I own. And don't think you know what I'm going to be talking about because of what this says right here. Anyway, I am asked so many times, how do you even know what you have? How do you know where it is? How do you know what it is? How do you know when you want to use what? And I don't take the approach that a lot of people take. I don't have one palette and it's a big mess, and I have a bunch of grays and all this kind of stuff. It's just the way I work. I like really pure color, and I like to not pollute it, and I like to know what it is and where it is. Now, this is, I am not nuts about core watercolor. It just, I've been doing watercolor for too many years. And so I can just tell the nuance of how it goes, on the paper, in the paper, in the brush, and so on. And there's just a difference. And I would be hard pressed to explain it, but it is sort of has a feel that's more acrylic. And that's the best I can do with that. But they're beautiful colors. I bought 3 sets of them. And I got these boxes. And my colors are actually in another box so that I can use these boxes as a palette, a studio palette. But I take it with me too. And so what I've done here, this is basically my palette of Sennelier for the most part. There are a couple of Daniel Smiths in here, but this is the Sennelier palette. And I paint with very bright colors, as you can see here. And when you have your pans, these are all full pans, but I have put the paint in myself. Now, that's something that I find to be really convenient. A lot of people don't think to do this because they're trying to save space. But when you want to take a brush and you want to activate some color, which I'm going to do right here, you can do that and pull away some paint to activate the color. And maybe what you're doing is you're making a wash over here. And you can keep picking up water and keep picking up color and making your wash over here. And you're not, I don't know how to describe it, but you're not making a hole in the cake of color like you would if you took a full pan and you kept dabbing at it. I'm going to show you an example of what I mean. Okay, so for just a second, though, we'll look at this palette. Also, I'm going to bring in this palette. And these are Handmade watercolors by Addison and Sedgewick, and that's my favorite, Sedgewick, my favorite of the Handmaids. And they come in nice overfilled half pans like this, but you can see here and here and here that as I add water and I pick up paint to use it, I'm creating little swimming pools in the top of the half pans. Now, why is that a problem? For me, it's a problem because going back and forth, the longer that a little pool sets here on a pan, the bigger, richer the pigment load. And so there's no consistency. And that's one of the problems with doing a wash painting from a pan anyway. I have another video on my channel about how to make a perfect wash, and it addresses that problem that when you return with your brush, you're getting an entire different load every time. So if you're going to put that, trying to wash down a page, you've got a lot of blotching going on. So we will be back to this. But I wanted to point out why this is a really amazing way to use your watercolor paint, to be able to get just the thickness you want and to, have it be consistent when you're making a wash. So these I have attached with magnet sheets, adhesive magnets, and I cut them in half. These were real big, so I cut them in half with a real tough scissors. I label each pan on the side with a indelible pen. Better than a Sharpie in permanence. This is called IdentiPen. It's made by, I will link this below. It looks like the Sakura label, but it doesn't say that right here, so I'm not sure. Anyway, it has a semi-broad tip and a pretty fine one, which is, this is the one I use on the sides of half pans. And so I have, this happens to be a Perylene Brown, and then on the end I have the brand, and this is Sennelier. I have abbreviations for them because it won't fit. I do this with every pan so that I know what it is and where to go to get the tube to replenish it. Okay, so when you are looking at a palette like this, you can pretty much tell what those colors are like, right? And especially where I've picked up some paint and, you know, it's now just a thin layer on the bottom, you can see it better. But when you're in here, I have this is greens. I am what do I want to say? A green junkie, and I don't necessarily like mixing my greens, and the reason is I want consistency. And so sometimes I do when I'm just loosely fooling around, but I want consistency. When I'm doing a painting or a sketch, I want to know that the green is the same when I make this tree as it was over here. And when I'm mixing, it's always different because, you know, you're running out and you're adding more blue and you're adding more yellow and you got a lot of things going on. And I would rather just have accuracy. Like when I want a nice yellow-green for my plants, I'm really fond of green gold. I'm really fond of green apatite. This is a Daniel Smith, even though it's in the Sennelier palette. I love olive. I love sap green. I am not as nuts about the bluer greens, and so I have fewer of them. But anyway, and I even have some really strange ones here that like a brown green, and this is called a brown pink. And I think they're both Sennelier, but anyway, they're very odd. And then here's a really odd one. It was a American Journey. Well, it still is, I think. And they have come back with that line of paints, even though Cheap Joe's is no longer a retailer. The American Journey is. And so this is called Ward Jeans Dusty Green, and it's amazing because it separates into green and brownish colors. So anyway, and then what I'm playing with here is my color chart. And the point of having color charts like this, what brought this to mind is I just watched a YouTube video and a gal had this beautiful binder, and in the binder were the pages of all of her paints from all the manufacturers, and they were swatched out beautifully. And she looked like she had as much paint as I do. So, but here would be the problem for me, is to be going through, away from the paint pen, going through a book, finding something I like, and then putting the book away, and then coming back and finding the brand, and then finding the paint. This is 300-pound Arches cold press watercolor paper, which is what I like to use for most of these. And with a paper cutter, I cut a size exactly it would fit inside the palette. And then I constructed this whole color chart with some ruler lines, you know, just to make it neat. And it's now getting not so neat, and that will happen. But this sits in this palette, and when it's dry here, you don't want to be closing this when you got wet paint. Oh, and this is how sweet it is to clean these palette covers. You just spritz a little water in it. It comes right out. Okay, so Anyway, when I want to use this set, and I will say this is my main set that I use in the studio these days. I used to have one that was all schminke. I never really been all Daniel Smith because the darn stuff won't stay in the pans. But this is my main palette, and I don't have it labeled because it's my main palette, and I have other ones labeled. So I'm going to set this aside and show you another paint box. And done the same way. Look at this. Oh my gosh. These are the paints called confections, and they're made by, is it Prima Arts? Something like that. If you search confections, you'll find them. And they have the most delicious variety of colors that no one else has that I have ever seen. And they come in sets of, I think, a dozen. And they have really nice little names like Unite and Namaste and Chant. That must have come from the same set there. But anyway, this is a composite of everything they have, I think, except Victorian and the glittery ones. I don't do that. But over time, I collected them. They came in the kind of palettes that have the little metal things that hold them. And I don't like the wiggliness of that or anything. And so what I did was I took all those tins and put them away. And I took all of the paint and put it in here. And then again, when you look at some of these paints just in the pan, you cannot really tell what color they are. And so again, that is why I make these charts in order and keep them with the pan. And then I know. Now something else I'm going to point out at the same time, you notice that I have lifted some color back in my swatches. And that I do that because I want to see the range of color. I don't want to just see what a flat wash looks like. I don't want to just see what a heavy cream application at full tube color looks like. I want to have it all. When I go looking for what I am the color I'd like to find, I want to see the range of all of these. Now, this particular paint, the confections, high points are the fabulous color range and pigmentation. The only caveat would be that paint is sort of like gouache and watercolor had a baby, so there is a little more opacity to these than the Sennelier or the Daniel Smith and so on, which are so transparent because their pigment is so finely ground. And so anyway, that's the reason why I do that kind of a lift on my swatches. So that's another palette here. I'm going to go back here for 1 second to show you I did the same lifting on all of these in here for the same reason. Okay, so, and they're not in a book. They're right here when I pick up that tin. I keep the tins in a drawer at arm's length here from the desk. This is a multi-palette, which means that it is all kinds of colors of all of the brands. Now, this is in a renovation process at the moment because this was, I'm going to show you what happens over time. This was my original color chart. And it is an unholy mess, really. And so, and these were my grays. They now have their own palette, which I'll show you in a minute. But this I am redoing to be a much neater version. I come to this palette very rarely, but I come when I know that I maybe only own 5 Winsor Newton colors or something, it's not my favorite brand. But anyway, I would have them in here and come and find them rather than to have to go find a tube and so on. And so that's why this is called a multi-palette. And underneath the name of each paint, I hope you can see, I put the company. So like this is called, these are colors you can't get from anybody but them. This is called Warm Gray Light. Isn't that lovely? And that is Old Holland. That's OH. Here's a Daniel Smith. Here's one that this is Daniel Smith because it's Amiata, burnt sienna. That's gone. You can't even get that anymore, unfortunately. But I still have a little in the pan. And the Amiata Raw Sienna from Daniel Smith. A plain S is Schminke. SENN is Sennelier, and WN obviously is Winsor Newton, and then you'll see I love M. Graham paints. I get to because I live in the desert in Santa Fe, and everything dries up, and so they dry sufficiently but re-wet wonderfully, and I don't have the problems that people have with them in more humid places. Also, I love the honey-based. Sennelier is also honey-based, and so is Mission. Mission Gold is another favorite brand of mine. So you see, it's all kinds of stuff, and I don't own, I only own some Old Holland, and you pay a lot for a little tiny tube of that because it's really awesome. But you wouldn't try to cover your whole bases with it. So anyway, this is in renovation. So these three are in a drawer together. And I'm going to get them out of our way and show you a couple of other ones. I'm just out to tell you how crazy I am, actually. I'm reaching to the side here, and you can't see, but I keep lucite, those clear lucite drawers for all of my paints and my markers. And this comes from not just being, uncontrolled. It comes from a lifetime as an illustrator. And being an illustrator, I'm also a gallery painter for a long, long, long time. When you are an illustrator, there are rules that you don't have when you're just painting for yourself. And you have to match certain product colors, and you have to do a lot of things. And so because I've earned my living that way for so many years, I have collected paint by the tons. And I have to keep it all straight and know, over the years, I do know what's where. I really do. I know which tin to go to for the problem I'm trying to solve. And I generally use my Sennelier really bright palette, but when I'm trying to match ceramic glazes and so on, that's a different story. Then you got to have subtlety or a little more grayish this or that. And you also have to be able to have consistency. So let's just say that I mix a really a nice grayish whatever for painting a piece of ceramic. And then the next illustration comes around, and I have to be able to come up with that exact color again. So doing that by indiscriminate mixing is never going to work for me. So therefore, I ended up with 10,000 million little pans of paint. I do like handmade paints for many reasons. Because of their texture, they'll generally granulate, because of their variety of color, because of the love that went into producing them. A lot of them I don't do because of price. I know it's a lot of work to make paint and everything, but there is still a level at which you can't go nuts. And a lot of handmade pans half pans are like $12 and $13 and so on. And I just can't do it. And one of the reasons that I love this company is that the pans are like $6 or $5, and there's even sales, and there are sets. And the owner is wonderful. I don't know her personally, but every time you order paint, you get this wonderful package that has tea in it. It has little postcards for practicing painting with the new colors. Just awesome, awesome customer service. And so anyway, I recommend them highly. Look them up, and I will put also I will put a direct link in the description for them. So this is my choice from a field of many, many colors. My advice when you buy handmade watercolor is that you buy it when you see it and you love it, because a lot of the hand makers do not repeat the same color in the future. And so you want to get, I'll go back in a year and maybe get that color. You probably won't find it. Anyway, I do recommend them. I'm going to show you another palette. This is crazy. I have a lot of Daniel Smith. I have 3 different palettes. This one, greens and reds. And these are the more unusual colors. Again, I really like this rare green earth, or this very blue-green. I haven't seen that anyplace. But these are their colors that are more, they're not everyday, But I put in here my everydays, too, because I want a big pan to sploosh around in. And so they fall out of everything. Daniel Smith, I don't know what it is, but in the humidity or lack thereof that we have, the paint dries up and falls out of everything. It might even fall out of these, but my best solution is, and this dumps out, it's rattling in here, but my best solution is I recycle the caps from bottled water. I put a magnet, a strong magnet on the bottom, and then I keep them in tins. Now, some dry more than others. You'll see here, I had to still put a piece of tape in the bottom of this when it fell out. But basically, this is my best advice on how to have a lot of Daniel Smith paints if you live in a dry area and not go crazy. So again, and sometimes I do circles, sometimes I do rectangles, who knows, but here is the specific color chart for these. And again, I mean, how in the world would I be choosing what's going on here or know what colors these 3 are if I didn't have this right here in this box? So that is the Daniel Smith greens and reds. This is the blues and earth oranges. A lot of variety of color. When I'm doing Southwest landscapes and I'm doing terracotta pots and so on, I have so much range of choice here. Again, I'm not trying to make you jealous with this. I am just showing you that it is possible to live organized with a lot of paints. Now here is another Daniel Smith. It says Grumbacher. Once upon a time, this was a box that a bunch of Grumbacher paint tubes came in. Reuse, the key thing here. In this box, I actually cut a piece of fun foam because these are kind of high to the top, and if I've got it wet and I need to put the box away, because I constantly put the boxes and get them out of my way. I don't stack up all these palettes and try to deal with it at once. I know right where they are in these drawers, and I just grab them. So anyway, I cut this piece of fun foam, and I must have tested a white pen on it at one time or another, but I cut off the corner so that when it's in there, there's a way for me to pick it up. Did the same thing with the color chart. So this is Primatek. Okay, so that's why this is different than the other ones. So these are the paints. I think there's a couple exceptions in here like that permanent yellow deep, but these are mostly a couple of duochromes too. These are mostly the Primatek. And I love them for their subtlety and their variety, but mostly I love them for their granulation, because they granulate more than most paints because they're made of ground up rocks. Forgot to put this in where it goes on the bottom. Okay, and one more nutty palette, and that is my grays. There are times when I want to do, I live in a crazy color area. I've got a lot of terracotta, I've got a lot of adobe, golden, yellows, all of that kind of stuff, yellow, greens. But I also have a lot of rock and coyote fences, which are this subtle gray and subtle everything. And so you can mix grays until your hair goes gray. Just, from your palette mixes, complementary colors make grays, and the amount of each makes an infinite number of grays, and warm grays and cold grays and blah, blah, blah. But just like I said before, I need consistency. And I can't remix. When you get things just right here with the amount of water you need and everything, it takes about 5 minutes for enough water to evaporate here that you no longer have that color. So I need consistency, and I buy different grays from all kinds of different places. Most of these are either from the Addison and Sedgewick line or from American Journey, which is the Cheap Joe's brand, but they are still making the paints. And isn't this incredible? I mean, take a good look at that. You can do almost any flower, you can do almost any vase or any plate or bowl or rock, or, I don't know, anything that needs a kind of a gray of one tone or another. So, excessive, yes. Excuses for that? No. This is what I do, and to do it my way and do it how I try to be perfect, I know there's no possibility. But the thing is, I believe in perfect. I believe in it as a goal. I think the idea of trying to be perfect, we learn a whole lot more than if we are just saying to hell with it, That's just the truth. So, this video has been nuts, I know. But I watch videos all the time about people showing me their art supplies, and I'm fascinated, even though I have too many art supplies. So I thought that you might be interested this time around. I hope this was fun. Let me know in the comments whether you are a minimalist or a maximalist when it comes to your watercolor paint.